Are you loaded?
No, no. And everything's relative. So yes, I could take you to umpteen different places in the world where compared with those people, I am just absolutely loaded.
India, for example.
Likewise, you're not going to get away with that one, Mel. Likewise, I could take you to many places, drive up many drives where in comparison I'm a pauper. So it's all relative.
There is
Here's the
a
key.
perception that you are loaded. Is that because you have how many cars?
Well, at the moment, only 4.
Oh, really? Only 4?
And one of them, to be fair, is a ute. Here's the thing. I decided not so many years ago that being rich was being able to buy instantly, without thinking about it, everything you needed. Not everything you wanted, but everything you needed. That was being rich. You could then...
Can you do that?
Yeah. You could then...
So you are rich?
By that criteria, I'm rich.
One of the extraordinary things you'll learn about Paul Henry is it was never, ever going to be any other way.
From the age that I first started to think, vaguely, what will I do or where will I be, I never imagined that I wouldn't be horrendously rich and horrendously well respected. That's right. Well, just hold that thought.
Well, perhaps not so well respected after he uttered these words.
Is he even a New Zealander?
Yes, he's a New Zealander.
Are you going to choose a New Zealander who looks and sounds like a New Zealander this time?
Well...
Also the dipshit woman. God, what's her name? Dick Shit. Is it Dick Shit? That is a moustache on a lady. It was a moustache on a lady. I just noticed it. I'm honest. I just say it as I see it. I mean, you tailor what you're saying to a degree. Everyone tailors what they're saying,
It doesn't seem that you do.
I do, but to a lesser degree.
But do you not think your description of yourself as I am just being honest is not just a little bit of a cop-out? I mean, I'm just being honest and talking about someone who's got facial hair and just completely taking the mickey out of them once they've left the studio. I mean, is that being honest or is that just being a prat and being like
Well, it could
unkind,
be. Well, it could be a combination
very
of those
unkind.
things. I mean, it's certainly being honest. She had facial hair. There's no question about that. It's obviously being honest.
I'm going to have to hit you.
Well, no, you could, because you could be some of those other things as well. Well, that
Because
has
I'll
to be
tell you a
determined by the
story.
audience.
This old woman came to visit us once and she did have facial hair. And my son said, "What's that hair growing out of your face?" And I mean, I was horrified, but, Paul, he was 5 years old. I mean, you're doing that as an adult.
So did you tell him off?
I told him that it was unkind to say those sort of things.
Why didn't she shave? Seriously. I mean, it's not a good look. Why didn't she shave? I mean, was she too old to shave? Didn't she have use of her hands?
That's not fair.
Well,
because
but
just
maybe
because
it
someone's
is.
not preoccupied with their appearance, that
Well, then
you
she
might
shouldn't
find...
care. She shouldn't care that someone says she's got a moustache.
No, but
You know what I mean? I mean, I know what you're saying. I know what
that woman.
Well, maybe I did. And I didn't set out to humiliate her. But it was the elephant in the room. What was I doing? I was telling everyone what they were already thinking. So you might say, well, there was no need to say it. But, it was so obvious to me. I just thought, there it is. Oh, we're so precious.
Are we?
Does it matter?
This is not one-off. You called a pregnant 15-year-old a slapper.
Yeah.
You asked if anyone cared about the prisoners of war being tortured in Afghanistan.
Well, do you care?
You suggested homosexuality is unnatural.
It is
You said
unnatural.
that Susan Boyle, as a singer, looks retarded. According to who?
No, I
According
didn't
to
say
you?
she looked retarded. I said she was retarded.
Well, that's worse.
No, it's technically correct.
Well, not what we do, though, I think, in New Zealand the last few decades is we've tried to be a bit kinder, a bit more sophisticated, and it feels a little bit like Paul Henry's come along and he's reignite the kind of redneck in everybody.
Oh, I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair. When you say rednecks, then there's the implication that in some way I am involved in promoting racism or something like that.
Well, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely not. Quite the opposite. I'm just calling it as I see it. If we had a country full of people that called it as we see it, this would be the country so void of any racism, But racism comes from breeding people who are frightened to say what they really think.
Oh, I don't think so. You know that you've been called racist. You've been called a bigot.
By a small number of people.
Well...
but even if it's a large number of people, they're wrong. Offhand, I can't think of anyone less racist than myself.
You know what, let's have a look at what you said about Sheila Dixit. I mean,
I'm pleased to see that you're pronouncing her name correctly. Most institutions mispronounce her name because it's such a funny name.
well, it is an interesting name.
I think Television New Zealand are still officially referring to her surname as Dixit, because it's much more palatable than Dick Shit, which is the true pronunciation of her name.
There she is, there. Sheila Dickshit. Sheila? Anyway, and it's so appropriate because she's Indian. So she'd be Dickin shit, wouldn't she? Do you know what I mean?
Paul, her name
Walking along the street.
is Ms. Dixit.
Oh, Dixit. So how we asked Mrs. Dickshit what the condition of the apartments was like. Well, they're a bit mucky. Anyway, so that's a bit funny, isn't it?
The whole reason that we were talking about it, and that it was as funny as it was, is the job that she had been given. You recall at the time that the biggest conflict over there was the fact that the Games Village was covered in shit. That no one could move into it because the conditions were so incredibly bad. That just a few days before, the effigy of a New Zealander had been burnt on the street. There were a whole combination of things which led to me saying those things, which are never reported when the lines are taken out of context. And even you presenting those lines to me now has taken them entirely out of context.
So you think you misunderstood?
Oh, I don't really care whether I think I'm purposely misunderstood by a lot of people.
But maybe that was just a tipping point, because next came the interview with the Prime Minister about the Governor-General. How would you describe those comments? Just as a bit of a laugh?
Cheeky. No, not as a bit of a laugh, just a bit cheeky. I wanted to find out what his criteria was for the next Governor-General.
Is finishes in the middle of
Is
next
he even
year.
a New Zealander?
Yes, he's a New
Are
Zealander.
you going to choose a New Zealander who looks and sounds like a
fact-
New Zealander this time?
Well, in fact...
Yeah, well, I was watching